In this episode, we talk about the challenges that Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy faces in Andhra Pradesh. We also talk about Home Minister Amit Shah's latest comments on Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. But first, we talk about the Supreme Court invalidating the arrest of the founder and editor-in-chief of NewsClick. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Back in October last year, the Delhi Police Special Cell arrested Parveer Purkayasth, the founder and editor-in-chief of NewsClick, after invoking stringent terror charges under UAPA. As part of the investigation, the police had also conducted raids at more than 50 locations connected to the news portal. According to allegations made by the Delhi police, NewsClick had received money for pro-China propaganda. It is important to note that this arrest took place after a report in the New York Times stated that NewsClick received money from US billionaire Neville Roy Singham, who is accused of spreading Chinese propaganda in India and abroad. What's also worth noting is that in the FIR, along with its source of funding, its critical reportage against the government was also considered terrorism under the charges. But now, after spending over 7 months in jail, the Supreme Court yesterday invalidated his arrest, saying that the Delhi police failed to inform Purkayasth of the grounds for his arrest before taking him into custody. In this segment, we are joined by Indian Express's Apurva Vishwanath to talk about the order. Apurva, this order by the Supreme Court centers around the way in which Purkayasth was arrested last year. Tell us, what do we know about what happened back then?
So sometime in August last year, the Economic Offences Wing had filed an FIR against NewsClick on pretty much the same charges as they did later. But in that FIR, the Delhi police had given an order saying that no coercive steps could be taken against them, which meant that Parveer Purkayasth, for example, could not have been arrested. So on 3rd of October, the special cell of the Delhi police raided the offices of NewsClick and also the house of Parveer Purkayasth, and he was sort of taken into custody. In the evening at about 5:30, the police actually arrested him, and there was an arrest memo which Purkayasth says was briefly showed to him. So there is a constitutional mandate that any person who is taken into custody must within 24 hours be presented before a magistrate. So technically that would be by 5:30 on 4th of October last year. So Purkayasth's lawyers have been arguing that there was some teething hurry and the Delhi police actually took him to the house of a magistrate at 6 in the morning, and his lawyers were not informed about a remand hearing. A remand hearing is basically where the magistrate will look into whether there are sufficient grounds to arrest and sanctions the arrest. And that is your formal being remanded into custody, right? So in regular parlance, it's called a remand hearing. So this duty magistrate allows a remand of 7 days, but Purkayasth's lawyers argue that only after the hearing had started, the Delhi police just sent over their remand application, unsigned one that too, on WhatsApp to Purkayasth's lawyers. And when you look at the remand order itself, which is now part of the court record, it shows that the magistrate signed it at 6 o'clock in the morning. So in a sense, perhaps even before Purkayasth was presented to him formally. And definitely before his lawyers were informed, and they had a reasonable opportunity to challenge some of these grounds of arrest. And the other thing, Shashank, is in NewsClick case, even the FIR was not made public, was not uploaded on the Delhi police website for a while. I think it's only about 7th or 8th of October that the public accessed a copy of the FIR in this case.
Right, and that is when we had come to know that even the critical reportage against the government was being considered terrorism under the charges.
Yeah, so this is an FIR under the stringent Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So this is a terror charge. And the fact that the lawyers only got to know about it, say, 5 or 6 days after the arrest, that is one of the key issues in this case. So on these grounds, Purkayasth, of course, went to the Delhi High Court challenging that remand. The Delhi High Court last year itself had upheld the remand, and then they moved to the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, since October last year, this case has been pending, and now the Supreme Court has finally looked at the facts of the case and the timeline specifically on when Purkayasth was arrested, when his lawyers were informed, and the fact that, he was not informed as to why he was being arrested. The grounds of arrest were not known to the person being arrested. So on these grounds, the Supreme Court has now invalidated his arrest, which means the arrest was not lawful.
And Apurva, when we talk about an arrest, what kind of emphasis does the law place on informing the person why they're being arrested, even on stringent charges such as these?
So, of course, we all have our constitutional rights. And in fact, Article 22 of the Constitution specifically talks about protections for citizens from unlawful custody and arrest. Having said that, if one of the things, especially in these stringent legislations like the UAPA or the PMLA, which is the money laundering case, these special legislations set a really high bar for getting bail, right? It's virtually impossible to get bail once you're arrested in these cases. So, which is why the procedural safeguards really become that much more important. It is, of course, important in an ordinary case of arrest as well. But you could argue, say, for like a crime like a petty theft or something, that when the state files a charge sheet against you, when the court accepts these charges, or at some point, the initial defects about arrest can be cured, which is, in fact, what the Delhi police was arguing in the Supreme Court. But when it comes to laws like the UAPA, which actually give such leeway to the state has very wide powers when it comes to what it can do. And even the provisions invoked in, say, Purkayasta's case, these are anti-terror provisions. It says soliciting funds for anti-India activities. And it basically says that Prabir Purkayasta attempted to commit terrorism in India. In a case like this, for the state to not have followed due process, ultimately, this due process is what is rule of law. The guard against arbitrary action by the state. So that is why the Supreme Court's intervention is that much more important.
And Apurva, talk about the kind of arguments that were made by the Delhi police in the case.
So the Delhi police, of course, their primary argument has been that the offences that are invoked in the FIR are very serious. These are offences that concern the integrity and sovereignty of India. And it talks about this grand conspiracy between entities who were funding NewsClick for a pro-China propaganda, right? And some of the things that the Delhi police has argued is that there are certain maps in Purkayasta's possession which show parts of India, which is Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh, as disputed territories. So that is essentially the terror charge against him. And of course, as corroborative evidence, they are bringing the NewsClick's coverage of the farm protests, saying that was another means to incite violence, which is, of course, all of this has to stand the test of truth in a trial. But as of now, Purkayasta's lawyers have been telling the Supreme Court that the Delhi police has not really found this in the digital devices. But keeping aside all of that, this hearing was simply about whether due process was followed in arresting the 72-year-old man. And if it wasn't, then what are the consequences of it? The Supreme Court simply said that the consequence is that he should be set free. Now, if the Delhi police wants his custody again, they will have to go through the whole thing.
And when you say the whole thing, you mean go about it from the beginning or file another set of charges?
They have to now again show to a magistrate that they have reasonable cause to arrest him. That means there must be something afresh in the case, right? But what the Supreme Court order does is it is a check and balance. It is reminding that proper procedure is as important, if not more important, than the substantial parts of a criminal trial.
And in that sense, what about the Supreme Court order stands out? What does it remark about the due process?
First, this safeguard, of course, there are constitutional mandates. There is also the CRPC, which also talks about informing people on the grounds of arrest. But it was only in a judgment last year that the Supreme Court recognized this. In fact, that judgment was delivered on the same day that Purkayasta was arrested, on 3rd of October. This judgment, Pankaj Bansal versus Union of India, is what essentially says that in a money laundering case, if the ED has not informed somebody or the grounds of arrest, that is, it should be given in writing to the person on why they're being arrested, then that arrest would be invalid. It is significant that the court extends this PMLA shield to something as stringent as the UAPA. So the red line is simply this, that even in a terror case, if you haven't followed due process, it vitiates the whole thing.
And next we talk about Andhra Pradesh, which went to the polls on Monday for both the Assembly and Lok Sabha seats. The state currently has the Jagan Mohan Reddy-led YSRCP in power, which, despite its numerous schemes, appears to be facing significant anti-incumbency, particularly in urban areas. Moreover, the coming together of the TDP, the Jan Sena and the BJP threatens the party on the state front, while PM Modi's popularity impacts its chances on the national front. To discuss the party's prospects and the challenges it faces, Indian Express's Sreenivas Janyala joins us. Srinivas, begin by telling us about the kind of position that YSRCP finds itself in, because you write that while it has the support of the rural voter, people aren't happy with him in the urban areas. So tell us a bit about that.
So in 2019, YSRCP stormed to power after Jagan's grueling Padayatra, during which he promised to implement lots of welfare schemes. So in the last 5 years, he did implement several schemes, and most of the beneficiaries are in rural areas, rural constituencies. So in this election, although he said that more than 80% of the population have been touched by his welfare schemes, it could be about 55 to 64% people. And most of the rural constituencies did strongly back or are strongly backing Jagan. So in those constituencies, his candidates, in spite of anti-incumbency, they should be doing well. But on the other hand, in the urban areas, the issues that voters face are more like lack of development, no government jobs, no new industries, no new projects, no infrastructure, etc. And of course, the BJP joining the Telugu Party and Janasena Party alliance has given a shot in the arm to the TDP, and they appear to have done well in the urban constituency.
And is this because a lot of these schemes of the government are primarily targeted towards the lower income groups, which we find in rural areas?
Yeah, mostly SCs, STs and BCs, and these were all beneficiaries are from lower income group, less than 3 lakhs per annum, like that. And they're all living in rural constituencies only. And their voting has been good, and women voted in large numbers. Women were primary target of most of Jagan's welfare schemes. So in the rural areas, yes, women appear, and women and these lower income groups appear to have voted overwhelmingly for Jagan.
And are there any anti-incumbency issues that the party faces in the rural areas as well?
Yeah, just before the elections were announced, last October at that time, Jagan was very confident. He said, why not? His slogan was, why not 175? 175 is the number of assembly seats in Andhra Pradesh. He threw a challenge to his cadre that why can't we win all 175 since we are doing so well?
So, in a way, the same confidence and bravado that the BJP has been showing with the Ab Ki Baar 400 Par slogan.
Yeah, so by December, he dropped that because when he started scrutinizing his candidates and sitting MLAs, he felt that there was tremendous anti-incumbency. And that is the reason 1/4 of the MLAs and at least 10 to 15 of his MPs have been dropped. In spite of that, there was anti-incumbency, mainly because Jagan concentrated mostly on providing the welfare benefits only. So everything else, civic infrastructure or jobs and everything else that is expected from a government had come to a standstill. So that caused a lot of anti-incumbency. Plus, with 153 MLA seats, it had become a very powerful party, YSRCP, and local MLAs started behaving very badly with government officials, police officers, etc. And even people who they felt that were not YSRCP supporters. So all these issues created a huge anti-incumbency for many of Jagan's candidates. And he had to drop them or replace them or move them to different constituencies. So yes, anti-incumbency was a big factor in this election.
Right, and you've also written about the Kapus, which are a forward caste in Andhra Pradesh. Could you talk about the kind of sway they have in the state?
Yeah, especially in the erstwhile undivided East and West Godavari districts, there are about 34 assembly seats in those two districts, which have significant from 10 to 25% of the population is Kapu, which has a strong influence on elections, especially in those constituencies. And in 2014, they appear to have supported Chandrababu Naidu. In 2019, en masse, they shifted to Jagan. But here in this election, again, they seem to have, second thoughts, and many of them may have returned to the TDP fold, mainly because of Janasena Party and K. Pawan Kalyan, actor turned politician who belongs to the Kapu community. And overall, about 19 to 25% of the population is Kapu in Andhra Pradesh in various districts. And whoever they vote for, generally that party has a slight edge over the others.
And Srinivas, this opposition alliance of the BJP, TDP and the Janasena Party, tell us about the kind of allegations they have been making against Jagan's party.
Basically, corruption is the first one, then all the development that has been stalled. Then, Jagan promised Andhra Pradesh is the only state which, if you ask anybody what is the capital, they would say Amravati, but it is nowhere written or it is not official. The main accusation against Jagan, apart from corruption, is that he has failed to build anything new, no new project, nothing. He proposed the decentralized development of capitals. Amravati will be legislative capital, Vishakhapatnam would be executive capital. From there, the administration will run the state, and Kurnool would be the judicial capital. But he made no move to make any of these cities, develop any of these cities into, decentralized capitals. That is one thing. Plus, he did try to bring investments into the state, but with the entire focus of the government being on just distribution of welfare benefits, no new industry or investments came in. So that has, stalled progress of the state. These are some of the allegations that he faces.
Right, and when we talk about Amravati, things have been stalled as far as picking the new capital for Andhra Pradesh is concerned. The deadline we know is June 2, after which Hyderabad will no longer be a shared capital for Andhra and Telangana, and yet nothing concrete seems to have happened. Could you talk about what Jagan has proposed so far?
Yeah, perhaps this June 2 deadline weighs on his mind. So just before, voting 2-3 days before in Vishakhapatnam, he said that if I return to power, I'll take out at Vishakhapatnam and then I will start functioning from here, which means he is now bound to make Vishakhapatnam as the administrative capital. He said that legislative capital will continue to remain Amravati, but there is no word about Kurnool becoming the judicial capital. But yes, I think all this criticism has got to him and he is now serious about developing Vishakhapatnam as a administrative or executive capital if he returns to power again. On the other hand, TDP and with the BJP backing, they said that whatever state is Amravati in, we will take up from there and we will develop it again into a new capital city.
And we've been talking about state issues, but could you talk about how things are expected to play out as far as the Lok Sabha polls are concerned and how differently people in Andhra vote in the general elections compared to the state ones?
In Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, we have seen people vote differently for assembly, state and central elections. So in Andhra Pradesh, I think if people voted for either YSRCP or TDP, the BJP's influence may have changed the voters' mind to, opt for BJP in the Lok Sabha election. And a similar thing is also being noticed in Telangana. So it could be like that. They will prefer a regional or local party for the state election and a national party for the Lok Sabha elections.
And since PM Modi is the main face of the BJP, how popular would you say he's in the state?
Yes, he is quite popular, and his popularity in both the Telugu-speaking states has risen after the consecration of Ram Temple at Ayodhya and lots of other things. His image as such in both these Telugu states, yes, he is quite popular. So I think that his image may have helped BJP to get a huge number of votes in both the Telugu-speaking states in vis-a-vis the Lok Sabha elections.
Also, one of the things that Rahul Gandhi has been saying is that all these parties, the YSRCP, TDP and the Jan Sena, are BJP's B team. Can you talk about that comment and explain the context behind it?
Rahul Gandhi mainly says that these people help each other by, fielding weak candidates where, BJP is strong or vice versa. They help each other and then all of them are hand in glove because if BJP needs support of all these regional parties, they will extend a hand of friendship and they will seek each other's support. That is why they are all hand in glove and each one is B team or C team of, BJP. He says that. Because in the past, whether it is TDP or YSRCP or TRS in Telangana, they have all supported BJP in the Lok Sabha to pass bills and all. That is why he refers to them as the B team of BJP.
And in the end, we talk about the Home Minister's latest comments on Arvind Kejriwal. Days after the Supreme Court granted interim bail to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the excise policy case, Home Minister Amit Shah yesterday said he does not see the top court's decision as a routine or normal judgment, and that a lot of people in the country believe that special treatment has been given to him.
आप उस जजमेंट के बारे में क्या कहेंगे? इंटरिम
देखिए, सुप्रीम कोर्ट को अधिकार है न्याय की व्याख्या करने का।
पर पहली बार हो रहा है कि
मगर मैं मानता हूं ये रूटीन और नॉर्मल प्रकार का जुडिशियल जजमेंट नहीं है। काफी लोग देश में मानते हैं कि स्पेशल ट्रीटमेंट दिया गया है।
This was an interview with the news agency ANI, where he was also asked about Kejriwal's campaigning for the India Alliance and his claim that he would not need to go back to jail if enough votes were cast in the party's favor. Shah said that this was a clear contempt of the Supreme Court, adding that it is for the judges who granted him bail to think how their judgment is being used or misused.
वो कैंपेन में तो कह रहे हैं कि अगर झाड़ू पे वोट लगेगा तो उन्हें जेल जाने की जरूरत नहीं होगी।
देखिए, तो मैं तो मानता हूं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट का स्पष्ट रूप से कंटेम्प्ट है। इनका कहने का मतलब है जो विजयी होता है सुप्रीम कोर्ट उनको दोषी होने के बावजूद भी जेल नहीं भेजती। अब जिन जज साहबों ने उनको जमानत दी है उनको ये सोचना है कि उनके जजमेंट का क्या उपयोग या दुरुपयोग हो रहा है।
The Supreme Court on the 10th of May had granted Kejriwal interim bail till the 1st of June, the 7th and last phase of voting in the ongoing Lok Sabha elections. Although this bail did come with certain conditions, including that he will not visit the office of the Chief Minister and that he will not sign any file as the Chief Minister unless there is a file being blocked by the Lieutenant Governor only because Kejriwal is not available. The only exception is that the file should not be related to the excise policy case. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.